Let me get this out of the way up front. This isn't one of those I had to follow a list of creepy rules on the night shift stories. I hate those. Real life, even when it gets weird, is messier than a bullet list. Nobody taped instructions to the register for me. Nobody said, never look at the ceiling at exactly 2:17. What I got was a name tag, a stack of plastic bags, and a town that pretended not to notice it was strange. The town is called Lantern's End. You won't find it on the big green highway signs. But if you take the exit for the outlet mall and miss it because the fog climbs over the guardrail, you'll hit our main street by accident and think you meant to. The lighthouse isn't on the water anymore. The shoreline wandered off a long time ago. The lantern still burns on a hill of black rocks, and at night the beam sweeps over empty lots and thistle in a grocery store with a cracked neon fish over the door. That's Lantern's End Market. That was my job. I moved there after I tried to be a person who makes 5-year plans, and instead became a person who runs out of money halfway through month 2. You know how it goes. A friend's cousin said there was a room above a barber shop that smelled like aftershave and plywood. The rent was cheap. The market was hiring. I took the overnight shift because I thought, how bad could a sleepy town be at 2 in the morning? You keep the coffee hot. You restock the cheese. You shoo raccoons away from the dumpsters. Easy. My first night, the owner, May, handed me a gray polo and said, "You look like a middle sibling. You'll be good at calming people down." That was the whole orientation. She was one of those women whose age lives in her knuckles and her humor. Her hair was the color of the lighthouse beam when fog eats it. "Customers get weird at night," she added. "That's not the town. That's just people. Don't let anyone make you feel small." "Got it," I said. "I can do small talk like it's a blood type." May laughed from somewhere in her ribs and went back to setting up the lottery scratchers at the front. "Eli will show you the back room. Aiko will show you the register. If something drips near the freezer and it's not water, call me." "If it's not water?" I asked. "It's never water," she said without looking, and that should have been my first clue. But you hear a lot of weird managerial sentences in retail, so I didn't file it as a warning, just a vibe. Aiko was a year older than me, and smart in a way the job didn't deserve. She was supposed to be writing a dissertation about freshwater algae in lakes that don't freeze. "Took a leave," she said, which can mean a lot of things at our age. She had a pencil behind each ear, and a patience that felt like a steady hand on a shoulder. "This register is older than the internet," she said, tapping a yellowed button labeled subtotal like it was a friend. "Sometimes the receipt printer decides to be a poet. Don't fight it. People weirdly tip better when the paper looks like it had feelings." Eli was 17 with a skateboard he wasn't allowed to ride in the store and a tattoo he wasn't supposed to have. He called me boss in a way that meant he wasn't going to listen until I made him. We liked each other anyway. He knew where every out-of-place thing was, like the shelves told him secrets. He also knew how to kick the cooler so it stopped making a sound like a man sighing under a heavy coat. "Back room's through here," he said, swinging open a battered gray door that thunked against a mop bucket like it was mad. "Don't mind the puddle. The roof leaks when it's clear out and holds when it rains." "Physics," I said. "Town," he said. "On my first 12 to 8, nothing supernatural happened. We restocked the yogurt, a fox ran past the windows like it was late for a bus, and a woman in a fur-collared coat tried to return an avocado because it looked at her wrong. Aiko handled it with the grace of a ballerina and an apology that somehow made the woman apologize back. I learned the feel of the drawer sliding open under my hand, and the way the scanner sat in my palm like a polite animal. I did notice the mirror by the end of aisle 4, the one facing the freezer doors. It was warped, the kind of cheap convex safety mirror that turns everyone into a funhouse version of themselves. If you stood just right, you could make your head look as long as a loaf of bread. Eli loved it. Aiko hated it. "It shows you what you look like to the town," she said, like that was a sane sentence. "Some people can't handle it." "What do I look like?" I asked. "New," she said, and smiled like a conspiracy. The town's weirdness arrived on my third night like a customer with exact change. Quiet, inevitable, not rude about it. The receipt printer started spitting paper as soon as I turned the key in the register. Not thrashing and jamming like when a bit of dust gets stuck. Just printing. The paper came out in a gentle ribbon and pooled on the counter. The words weren't words. They were letters spaced like someone with a typewriter was learning how to breathe. Aiko tore it off, rolled it up, and tucked it into a cardboard Del Monte box under the counter where the extra thermal paper lived. "We keep them," she said. "They're pretty. You're not even going to read it?" "I did," she said. It said, "Please." It always says, "Please" on drizzle days. "Please what?" "Please," Aiko said, and shrugged like sometimes that is the whole sentence. Around 1, a man in a dark suit came in the way a page turns, softly and with purpose. The suit didn't fit him right, like he'd borrowed it from someone taller. He carried a bouquet of supermarket flowers, the kind that smell like a promise you know is going to be broken. He set them down on the counter and asked me for twine. "We don't sell twine," I said, because I'd done the inventory, and it's the kind of detail my brain clings to. "We have ribbon. We have a bungee cord with a broken hook. We have tape, but it's the worst kind." "Ribbon, then," he said, as if he was open to grace. I cut him a long piece of red ribbon from the craft display, and he tied it around the flowers like he'd done it too many times. He counted out coins onto the counter, but the coins were wet, like he'd scooped them out of a glass someone had been keeping on a windowsill. The water smelled like the lighthouse beam would smell if it had a smell. "You're new," he said. His voice was kind. His eyes were not kind. That combination always puts me on my best behavior. "Third night," I said. "How am I doing?" "You're speaking to people," he said, like that was a rare choice. "It's a good start." He left without the bell ringing. Some people have that talent. When the door shut, the bouquet fogged the glass for a second. It left a fern shape that stayed until 3 and then faded like a bruise. "I hate him," Aiko said very calmly. "He's irregular." "He's regular," she said, and left it at that. From the first week I learned the arcade rule, not a set of instructions, just a feeling. If you keep moving, the game keeps letting you play. If you stand in one place and stare at the score, you start to notice the math is wrong. So we moved. Eli pulled pallets with a stubborn little grunt he thought nobody heard. I zoned the soup like it mattered where the chicken noodle lived. Aiko did returns with a politeness that made people tell the truth. Here's the part where I tell you about the weird town stuff in a way that sounds like gossip, since that's how it filters in when you work a counter. There's a cul-de-sac on the west end where all the houses are painted the same shade of cheerful yellow. But if you walk past at night, every porch light is green. Not sage, not energy efficient. Green, like algae on a rock. There's an old pharmacy with a display of baby bottles from the 50s still in the window. No one has the key anymore. The bottles never gather dust. The barber downstairs from me keeps the chairs turned toward the window, even when he's closed. Sometimes when I come home at 9 in the morning, still wearing my name tag and the smell of lemons, I see the chairs sway as if someone just stood up. There's a place down by the water where the rocks clack under your feet like teeth. If you stand there too long, your phone asks you to set the time manually. No one talks about any of it like it's special. No one says haunted. The town doesn't have the energy to brag. Lantern's End Market became the place where the town's version of normal and our version of normal shook hands awkwardly and agreed to pretend they knew each other. People came in for milk and batteries and a conversation where my side was 70% no problem and 30% we close at 11 on Sundays now. Once, a woman in coveralls bought 20 feet of garden hose and a pack of candles and asked if we had a map of the old roads. Not the ones on paper, she said. The ones that remember. A week in, the weird thing that put its hand on my shoulder and squeezed happened. It was a Wednesday, which means nothing, but it felt like one. The air in the store tasted like pennies. Eli was heaving sacks of dog food like a show-off. Aiko was in the office reconciling a drawer that had decided money was more of a vibe than a fact. I was at the register reading the back of a cereal box because sometimes your brain needs fake news to chew on. A boy came in. 10 maybe. Hair like straw. Cheeks still round with the last of babyhood. He wore a hoodie with a monster on it that probably had a clever name. He went straight to the freezer aisle and put his palm on the glass of the ice cream door, the way kids do when they haven't learned yet that glass is a boundary. Need help? I called, already moving, because sometimes kids say no. And what they mean is, I need an adult to pretend this is a game so I can ask for what I want. He didn't answer. His breath fogged the glass and then didn't. The print of his hand stayed even when he took it away. The lights inside the freezer flickered and then steadied. There was a smear on the inside of the glass, like something pressed against it from the other side and slid. "Hey, buddy," I said, that helium voice we all reserve for other people's kids. "What you looking for?" He didn't look at me. He lifted his hand again and laid it on the glass exactly over the print like he was lining up a picture. This time the glass dimpled. Not much. A breath. A flinch you'd miss if you blinked. "Eli," I said, and my voice did an ugly puberty crack I hadn't heard in years. Eli came jogging with the posture of a hero in a video game and then stopped dead like he'd run into a wall. He said, which I think is Latin for nope. The boy spoke without moving his lips. "Do you have the blue one?" "The blue what?" I said, and immediately regretted making this interactive. "The blue," he said, like he was describing a flavor. Aiko appeared at my shoulder. She didn't touch the kid. She didn't touch me. She just stood the way you stand if you want someone to know you're there without crowding them. "What blue?" she asked. "The one with the sprinkles," he said, and there was something like hope in it. Not the normal kid kind. It sounded older, like it had been waiting a long time and was trying not to embarrass itself. Aiko opened the freezer door. The cold rolled out with that clean chemical smell of Freon and milk in the ocean. She crouched and scanned the boxes like a surgeon looking for a specific organ in a hurry. "We have birthday cake," she said. Blue frosting swirl. Is that it? The boy closed his eyes. The dimple in the glass smoothed out. His hand left a clean oval that I could see through to a shelf that had not been there before. Aiko reached into a gap I swear didn't exist a second earlier and pulled out a pint I've never seen on any delivery invoice. Blue with a white paper lid stamped with a lighthouse. That one, the boy whispered, and smiled in a way that would break you if you let it. I rang it up. The barcode beeped without complaint. The receipt printer wrote "thank you" 4 times in cursive no one had programmed into it. The boy paid with $2 bills and something that wasn't money, but felt like it ought to be. I didn't hand him the receipt. He didn't ask for it. He took the ice cream and left. The bell on the door did ring that time. I remember it because it felt like relief. "Okay," I said very loudly to the fluorescent lights. "What the hell?" "Local brand," Aiko said, with a straight face a cartoon could be jealous of. "It's seasonal." "What season is that?" "Don't worry," she said. "You'll know it when it happens." After that, the store didn't even pretend to be normal. That's the thing nobody tells you about weirdness. Once it decides you're good to talk to, it won't shut up. It comes in like humidity. People think they made a choice, but really they just learned another kind of weather. The next night, a woman in a wool coat bought a handful of votive candles and asked, very politely, if anyone had ever returned a shadow. A man in a reflective roadwork vest bought a map of the county and turned it upside down, like it would make more sense that way. An old guy named Mr. Callahan bought 2 cans of cat food and a pack of gum and told me the lighthouse was a liar. "It points at what left," he said, "never at what's coming." May's style of management was to be the kind of adult who remembers what music you liked in 9th grade. She never used scare tactics, never gave me spooky folklore. "You're doing fine," she'd say when my face was giving away more than I meant it to. "Don't let the store make you think you're a toy." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the job is a job," she said. "You set things on shelves. You look people in the eye. You keep the coffee hot. If any of the other stuff wants to make you feel like a character in a story, make it pay full price." I loved her for that. It's so easy to be somebody else's plot device when you're young and broke and lonely. It's seductive. The store had momentum. I tried to be an object, a surface it slid past without catching on. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes not. The freezer had opinions about me. Every time I walked past, the light inside brightened like it wanted my attention. I did not give it my attention in the way cats like, by pretending to ignore it while angling my body toward it. I just ignored it. That made it sulk. The sound it made when it sulked was a cross between wind chimes and a throat clearing. Eli said I was imagining it. Aiko said the compressor needed a look. May put her hand on the door and said, "Hush," and the noise dulled like a kid in the next room remembered someone could hear. It's not all refrigerators and receipt poetry. Sometimes the town does its weirdness outdoors, and it sneaks in on people's shoes. One night, a couple of fishermen came in at 2:45, smelling like the inside of a metal bucket, and bought hand warmers, instant coffee, and a small bag of bird seed. "Gulls know more than they tell," one of them said, like he was arguing with the ceiling. The other one kept his hand flat on the counter until the credit card processed, like if he lifted it, something would lift him back. The living part underneath all this, All the someone else might call this haunted stuff is work. I know that's not sexy. But the truth is, work fills the air between the strange. You can be wiping down a counter while the sky forgets what color it's supposed to be. You can be mopping while the radio goes silent because someone walked past the station. The tape gun can stick to your fingers while a girl you went to school with walks by the plate glass, holding hands with a man who isn't there. The mop still leaves a streak. The tape still bites. The hand you didn't hold still looks like yours. 2 things happened in the same week that made me stop being a person to whom the store told its weird little jokes and start being a person who was in it. First thing, a sinkhole opened in the parking lot. Not a big one, the size of a kiddie pool. I saw it first on my lunch break at 4 in the morning. The asphalt had caved into a neat circle with a tidy lip, like the earth had stamped something and peeled it back. The bottom wasn't a bottom. It was glassy, dark, like the inside of a bell. If you leaned over, you could see your own face, but older. Not like a mirror distorts you, like time did. Eli threw a traffic cone over it and called it done. By noon, it had filled with rain even though the sky was clear. By 8 that night, it was gone. People pretended they'd misremembered where they parked. Second thing, a regular went missing. Her name was Etta, and she had a voice like somebody who used to sing and stopped for a reason no one would make her tell. She always bought 2 tins of mints and one of those tiny sodas that are basically marketing lies in aluminum. "It's the right amount," she'd say, like she was teaching us portion control by example. She came in on a Tuesday, didn't speak to anyone, bought a pack of those green scrubbing pads that eat your fingerprints, and left. Wednesday, she didn't come. Thursday, her niece put up a flyer on the corkboard by the ATM with a photo that made Etta look too stern. Friday, the old men who play checkers at the coffee counter shook their heads like they were practicing grief. Saturday, May sighed in a way that made me want to hug somebody. "If she's gone, she isn't gone," Aiko said. "Not from here." "What does that even mean?" I asked. "It means the store remembers," she said. "If you want to know where she went, check the place she touched the most." Etta had a ritual. Some people do. She'd tap the corner of the freezer glass before leaving. Just a knock, soft, like thanking a building. We all do private little things that make us feel like the world will be less cruel if we pay exact change. That was hers. So I went to the freezer and looked at the glass in the corner where the hinge is. And there was her print. Not a greasy smear. Just a place where condensation never formed, in the shape of her knuckles. It was old, like someone pressed their hand there a long time ago. And time decided the glass would always remember that pressure. I touched it. It was warm. The freezer wasn't obviously colder or louder. It didn't do a fairy tale thing where it shows you a picture if you say the magic word. But the receipt printer coughed at the register. It spat a single line. She took the road with the lights. "What road?" I said to Air. "There are no roads with lights here except the main one, and half the street lights are out." Aiko leaned against the chip rack, reading a paperback with the cover torn off. "Down by the lighthouse," she said without looking up. "There's a path people take when they don't want to be seen taking it. Why doesn't anyone stop them?" "Because it's not that kind of path," she said. "You don't go on it because a person tells you to. You go on it because you've been going on it your whole life and you finally notice." I went anyway. I took my lunch early and told May I was going to stretch my legs. She didn't ask where. She never asks. She trusts until you give her a reason to adjust. The lighthouse looks silly in daylight, like a person wearing formal clothes to a picnic. It still works, though. Sometimes during storms, the beam will snag on a cloud and stay there, pointing, like it's accusing the sky of something. The path Aiko meant was a goat track behind the keeper's cottage, which isn't a cottage anymore, just a rectangle of foundation with a wild rose bush trying to remember its shape. At the bottom of the hill, where the old pilings stick out of the mud like black teeth, there are lanterns. I don't know how else to say it without sounding like I'm trying too hard. They hang from hooks driven into driftwood posts. They are glass and metal and bits of wire. They are not plugged in. They don't have batteries. They aren't torches or candles. They are lanterns, and they glow like someone told them a secret, and they want to tell you too. They go on when nobody is there. They go off when you look at them straight on. They flicker in your peripheral vision, like you just remembered a word you were trying to think of in the shower. Etta was there. She wasn't. That's how the place works. In some lights, you could tell where she'd walked, the way you can tell where a heavy piece of furniture used to sit because the carpet holds the shape. Footprints in reeds, a scuff on a rock, the sense that the air hadn't filled back in yet behind her. I stood where the path turns and looked toward town. The market's neon fish blinked. The sign hum was the only sound. The water looked like a piece of steel someone dropped a thought into and never pulled back out. The lanterns did their peripheral vision trick, and just for a second, I saw the road. It wasn't paved. It wasn't dirt. It was there, like a crease in paper. It turned in toward the hill and went under. I did not follow it. I am not a hero. I am a cashier who likes my teeth the shape they are. When I got back, May had a pie on the break room table. It hadn't been there before. It smelled like apples and wine and those fall-scented candles that are supposed to make you nostalgic for a childhood in a different tax bracket. There wasn't a note. There never is, when the town gives you something to say thanks for looking and not taking. We ate it with plastic forks. Eli pretended he didn't like it. Aiko said something about tannins in a way that made me want to Google tannins later like a private student. May looked at me over the crust like she could tell I'd been where people go when they've had enough of above ground, and she nodded once and didn't say any words at all. That's her language too. Here's the part with the storm. They always tell these stories with storms. Sorry to be predictable, but the weather does what it wants, and sometimes it wants to be set dressing. This one came in from inland, which I didn't know storms could do. It smelled like dust. The sky went the color of old denim, and then the color of a bruise. The parking lot got that shine where it looks like a fake photograph. People came in with their heads down. People bought candles and bread and 12 packs of the beer they drink when they're pretending it isn't the taste they want. It's the temperature. At 10, the power hiccuped. The emergency lights came on and made everyone look like they were remembering a crime. The receipt printer spat a foot of paper. Stay. The radio died. The lights flickered. I had that feeling of being watched by a big empty room. The freezer made a noise I've only heard from animals. It wasn't a scream. It was a suggestion of one, the way you feel the bass from a car stopped next to you at a red light. Aiko put her hand on the door and said, "No," in a voice that meant business. Eli stood beside the chip rack like a soldier guarding something not worth dying for, and doing it anyway, because that's what you do when you love your town. The door at the back, the one to the loading dock, opened on its own. We all looked at May. She said, "No," again, and then, "We're open until 11 unless the roof comes off." The roof did not come off. The storm forgot about us and moved on the way a well-meaning friend forgets to text back. But while it was trying, something else arrived at our dock. The kind of something you would prefer arrived somewhere else. Footsteps. Slow, like mud was making a claim. Then a knock on the metal door, the middle part, where no one without a ladder would reach. That's when the bell at the front rang without the door opening, and a man came walking down aisle 3. Not the bouquet man. He was taller, and he looked like someone who wears a watch but doesn't check it. His shoes were wrong for the weather. His coat was cut like the idea of a coat. His eyes were the color of the inside of a lid. "May," he said, like they had a history. "Wick," May said, like she regretted it. He nodded at me, Aiko and Eli, as if totaling us up. "You're staffed," he said. "Good." "We're closed," May said, still polite. "Please come back in the morning." He smiled like a math problem that only looks simple. "No one's closed, May. Not tonight. Not with the road open." "Get out," she said, the way a mother says it when she knows the kid loves her anyway. He didn't. He walked to the back without hurrying, without looking like he expected us to stop him. Past the dairy, past the canned tomatoes, past the locker where we keep brooms, to the dock. He opened the door we had locked without unlocking it. The storm didn't come in. The smell did. It was the smell of old ice and pennies and breath you've been holding too long. There were people there, not shoppers, not ghosts. People. Except the wrongness wasn't about not existing. It was about existing elsewhere. Like they'd been to a market that agreed to exchange light but not air. Their faces were fine. Their clothes remembered fashion trends from 10 years ago. Their hands were very still because they were carrying things that looked fragile even when they weren't. Things like jars of buttons. Things like maps drawn on cloth. Things like a bundle that was certainly a child and also certainly a sack of laundry, and neither and both. They filed into our store like they owned it, because the truth is they do, and so do we. And the town is just a long argument about who has more receipts. Lanterns end night exchange, Wick said, like he was introducing a band. Open under storm conditions, close under day. Come in, come in. We have aisles, we have cashiers, we have what you forgot to lose. May moved like a striking snake and put herself between him and the register. None of your customers touch my staff. They aren't your staff when the dock's open, he said, not unkindly. They are clerks, and clerks serve. Clerks survive, she said. That's the service. He smiled again, smaller. You always did have a way of making your defiance sound like customer service. What do you do when a whole other store layered like a glass slide over your store steps in through the back and sets itself down on top of your life? If you're me, you work. You ring people up. You bag. You ask if they found everything okay. You look at their eyes without flinching. You don't ask where they're going with 3 yards of rope and a jar of lightning bugs. You don't ask why their money feels like weather. Eli stuck to me like a shadow that had a baseball cap on backwards. Aiko went very quiet and moved behind the counter with the stillness of a lake at night. May did not sit down. Her posture said, "Not in my house." Wick wandered the aisles with authority that made me want to staple his coat to the display of corn holders. The night exchange customers are not rude. In some ways, they're more polite than our daytime weirdos. They say please like they've learned words by looking them up and practicing in the mirror. They smile like they know it reassures you. The wrong thing is in the timing. Their questions come half a second late, like a bad internet call. They don't laugh. I don't know if they can. We went like that for an hour. The storm outside pressed on the windows like a big hand, but no rain fell. The bell rang when the door didn't open. The freezer hummed and was quieted by Aiko's palm. The receipt printer did not write poetry, because it was doing overtime printing receipts that said, "Exchange," where credit should be. Then the boy with the blue ice cream came back. He walked the wrong way, straight to the dock, like a river remembering downhill. He wasn't alone. He had Edda's hand. I don't know how I can say it was her when her face was not her face. It was her because of the way she moved, like she was careful not to bump people. And she said excuse me to displays as if she'd been taught courtesy by an object once. She wore a coat that was a little too long, and a bracelet that was absolutely hers. I know because I'd seen it on her wrist 100 times when she counted coins into her palm. "Hey," I said, too loud. "Hey." She looked at me and her eyes were a color I don't know the name of. Not a mysterious alien color. Just the color eyes are when they don't belong to your world's palette. Like the paint store chose not to stock it. "Hi," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't come in Wednesday." "Are you okay?" I asked. Because you ask that even when it's ridiculous. "I needed a place where the lights don't decide how late it is," she said, and smiled like she meant to make me feel better. "I'm settled now." "You can't just..." I started, and Wick was suddenly beside me, quiet as small math. "She can," he said. She did. She paid. She used her road. "What did she pay?" I asked, like a fool, even though I could guess. "Not for you," he said. "Don't take on debts that don't belong to your name." "I want to talk to May," I said. "You are," May said from somewhere to my left, and when I looked she was closer than I thought, and her hand was on my arm in a way that said both "I'm here" and "stop." "Let her," May said to me, and her voice didn't shake because it doesn't. She chose. We can be mad about the road all we want. The road doesn't care. Edda squeezed my hand like a mom at a high school graduation. "You made good coffee," she said. "Tell Aiko I liked how she apologized without saying sorry." She squeezed once more, and then let go and walked into the dock light, like someone walking into a better church. The boy with the blue ice cream looked back with his mouth open like he wanted to say something about sprinkles. He didn't. They were gone. I wanted to cry. I wanted to knock everything off the counter. I wanted to pick a fight with a man named Wick, because obviously that's what my life was now. Instead, I rang up someone buying 2 pounds of rock salt and a pocket mirror. That's retail. You keep the line moving. When the night pulled itself back together, the dock was a dock again, and the storm remembered to be rain, and then forgot again. The freezer sighed. Eli went outside and did that thing boys do, where they kick gravel, like it did something to them. Aiko wrote down how much exchange money we had and put a piece of receipt poetry under the tray. May sat on a milk crate and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Do you hate him?" I asked her. I meant Wick. I meant the town. I meant the whole machine of it. "I hate that there are two stores," she said. "I hate that mine has to be the one that pretends." "Why do we pretend?" I asked. "Because the other one doesn't," she said. "It never has. Somebody has to teach the new people how to use carts." We cleaned up. That's what you do when you don't know what else to do. Bottles go back. Receipts get reconciled. Men named Wick leave tracks that don't look like tracks when you mop them. They look like the mop decided to change directions. At 6, the dawn played that trick where it pretends to show up and then sits in the parking lot yawning. We turned the sign to open, even though it felt like it had been open for years. By the time my shift ended, the town had decided to be normal again. The barber put a sandwich board outside that said, "Walk-ins welcome in chalk weather" had smudged. The coffee place put out muffins with names like Morning Meadow. Eli skated past a church and pretended it didn't look back. I climbed the stairs to my room above the barber and lay on the bed with my socks still on and tried to inventory my parts like I could misplace one without noticing. I thought I'd dream about the dock. Instead, I dreamed about ringing up batteries for a woman whose coat smelled like rain and reading the back of cereal boxes and wondering if the bee on the front had a pension. Brain is like that. It retreats to what it understands. It can only look at weirdness out of the corner of its eye. I didn't quit. I've quit a lot of things. I've had jobs you could leave by forgetting where your lanyard was. I stayed at Lantern's End Market. Not because I'm brave, because I didn't want to leave May and Aiko and Eli and the old men who play checkers in a place where math takes attendance. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was good at the job I had, not the job I wanted in theory. Staying is a choice you make every night. That's true anywhere. But in Lantern's End, the town pays attention when you choose it back. The new thing that happened next didn't feel like a crisis at first. It felt like a prank. The carts wouldn't come back in a straight line. We'd push them toward the corral and they'd drift left, nose into each other, stacked sideways like strollers at a theme park. Eli got mad because he likes neatness, but he doesn't like to admit it. So he cursed at them like skateboarders do when they fall on gravel. The carts kept migrating. We'd line them up. They'd turn themselves to face the road. Not the actual road, the other one. "Stop it," I told them. "I don't care if that makes me sound like I talk to grocery carts. You talk to plenty of things in retail. Like a tape gun, like a soda fountain, like a person who thinks you set the price of avocados personally and can be talked out of it." A cart I was pushing shimmied in a way that made my palms itch. It felt like a dog leaning on your leg. Not aggressive, needy. It wanted to go home. "I get it," I said, and pushed it harder into the corral. I wedged the line with a bungee cord and a broom handle because I am a problem solver with access to office supplies. That's when the old woman in the yellow slicker laughed at me. "You can't stop a wheel by telling it no," she said conversationally. "You have to give it a hill to roll down that it likes better." I had no idea who she was. I see faces. I remember stories. But names are hard when you work nights. She had that look some people have in town, like they might have been anybody in another life, and just stood up and walked into this one by mistake. Her hands were clean. Her eyes were not unkind. "What do you suggest?" I asked, polite by reflex. "Turn the corral around," she said. "Face it east. The left-right thing is a compromise they're making to be nice." Eli laughed before he realized she wasn't joking. Then he moved the corral. It took both of us and a crowbar because the bolts had rusted in a way that told a story about time and salt and somebody loving this store enough to install a cart corral in the first place. We turned it, slowly, to face the road that isn't a road. The carts lined up like soldiers. I swear one of them sighed. A day later, someone taped a flyer to the window next to the ATM. It didn't have a photo of Etta. It had a photo of a pie. It said Community Bake, this Saturday 5 p.m. Under that, smaller, "Thank you." Aiko cried reading it. Eli pretended his allergies were acting up. May put a 20 in the coffee can because she knows when to be practical. It never stops being a store. That's the weirdest thing. You can live 10 lives between midnight and dawn and still argue with a vendor about whether the shipment was short a case of sparkling water. You can call the Pepsi guy and talk to him about the machine that eats quarters, like it's digesting guilt, and then you can hang up and nod to a man who is definitely not there, in a way that makes you feel polite. Both are true. Both matter. There's one more thing I want to tell you because most stories like this get coy at the end and I'm tired of being coy. A girl went missing. Not Etta. A kid. 11. Her name was Sophie. Her mom works 2 jobs and sleeps 3 hours at a time in a chair you can fold into the kind of bed your back forgets. Sophie comes in for hot Cheetos and lime soda, and the kind of lottery scratcher that looks like a game, but is really just math. She says hi to me even when she doesn't want to, because we're that place for her. You know the one. A middle. Sophie didn't come in for 3 days. That could be nothing. Kids go to cousins' houses. Kids get grounded. Kids decide to try on silence like an outfit. On day 4, her mom came in with a face like 2 fists holding hands and asked if we'd seen her. We had not. She put a flyer on the board and stapled it like the act could be loud enough to bring her back. The photo was Sophie with a dog that had died 2 years ago. That's what grief does. It elbows the now aside and pulls the then up onto the stage. I went home after my shift and stood at my sink and asked the town out loud to give her back. I don't know why I thought that would help. Maybe because nobody warns you how easy it is to pray when you don't even believe you're praying. That night, the receipt printer started before I turned the key. It spit paper that said count again. It spit more that said she owes. It spit more that said she's due. I wanted to throw the whole roll into the mop bucket and light it on fire like paper snakes. Aiko took my hand off the machine and said, "We go to the dock." "Now?" I said. "It's not storming." "It doesn't matter," she said, eyes on a point over my shoulder. They opened a tab. May met us at the back. Eli was already there with the crowbar like he thought it was a sword. The dock door was shut. There was no light. There was a smell like old pennies and freezer burn and the inside of an envelope. Wick was there in the way a thought is there before you think it. "You owe us those carts," he said lightly. "You can have the carts if we can have Sophie," May said, like she'd rehearsed it in the shower. "Do you propose to exchange a wheel for a child?" he asked, amused. "That's a poor bargain. Not even a fairy would take it." "Then you shouldn't mind saying yes," she said. He smiled. He leaned on the door like it was a friend who owed him money. "She came by the road," he said. "We don't drag people in from their kitchens, May. That's your side's specialty." "I know how she came," May said, and there was a tiredness in it that made my bones ache. "I want to know how she pays." Wick shrugged. "We all pay. She has time. We love time. We drink it like water. She's 11. My voice surprised me with how angry it was. "She has no time. Her time is her mother's. You don't get to spend it." He looked at me like I'd shouted in a library, and he was choosing whether to be indulgent. "Is she yours?" he asked. "She is not yours," I said. "The dock doesn't belong to anybody," he said. "It just opens. It doesn't care if your heart breaks." "Then why do you?" I asked. "Why are you here talking instead of counting your jars or whatever you do?" Something in his face tilted. Not like he softened. Like I said a thing that made him see a sliver of something he'd lost. "Because I like when May argues," he said finally. "Because I like stores that pretend to be small against big things. Because the ledger keeps itself, but the job of a clerk is to stand there shaking her head and say no until somebody says yes loud enough for the math to shut up." "What do we give you?" May asked. "Say it plain." Wick looked at the carts facing east. He looked at Eli, at Aiko, at me. He looked at the receipt printer throwing a tantrum. He looked at the freezer that had been good until now. "Her debt is a memory," he said. "We took it as collateral when she walked. We'll keep it unless you have something better. The one with the middle sibling eyes can pay." "No," May said, and her hand was on my arm again. "No." "What memory?" I asked, because I am stupid in exactly the way people are when they think love is just another word for stubborn. "First time someone told you were safe," he said promptly. "Whole thing. The blankets. The hand. The ceiling. The exact number of dust motes you counted. Payment due now. I don't know about you, but my body stored that memory like a biscuit under a couch. I knew exactly where it was. I could feel the weight of it in my chest. I could feel what would happen to me if I put my hands on the counter and let him take it. I would still be me. I would look like me. I would go to work. I would laugh at Eli's jokes. I would walk past the lighthouse and pretend I'd always known which way north is. And inside, some part of me would be unstitched." "Pick something else," May said. Her voice had that quiet of the edge of a cliff. "Pick something of mine." Wick shook his head gently, like a teacher at a kid who tried a charm that works in other stories. "It asked for her," he said. "You can't argue with a match. It is either the head of this one or the head of that one. It cannot spark on two." Aiko stepped forward. "What if we pay in receipt?" she said. "You cannot receipt a feeling," Wick said, almost kindly. "You can mark it," she said. "You can timestamp it. You can say it's been paid and file it. That's all a receipt is. Proof that a thing has already become the past." Wick considered. The dock door breathed. The storm outside remembered the word thunder and then forgot it again. Eli made a small sound that I will mock him for forever, that I pretend was a cough. The freezer sighed. "Fine," Wick said, like a god losing an argument on purpose. "Write the receipt." Aiko slid the register toward me like we were just changing shifts. I turned the key. The machine woke up like an old dog practiced at pretending to sleep through trouble. I typed in something that wasn't a price. I typed in the shape of the memory, blankets, ceiling, a woman's hand on my forehead, the feeling of my ribs loosening. I typed in the date if it had one. I typed in the timestamp my body knew. I hit total. The printer screamed. Not loudly, just at a pitch that made your teeth remember you haven't been flossing. It spit a ribbon of paper that hit the floor and coiled like it was ready to be a snake as a second career. I wrote in pen, paid by clerk. I signed my name. May put her hand over mine and signed hers too, the way people co-sign on loans. Wick took the receipt delicately, like it was a living thing that might bolt. "We do love paper," he said, and for the first time I thought maybe he used to work where we work and just got promoted into myth. The dock door opened like a throat. Sophie walked through wearing an expression like she'd just woken up in a car on a road trip at a gas station. "Did you know?" she said sleepily. "They have ice cream where the nutrition facts are all zeros." "We don't," I said, and tried to keep my voice from cracking. "Good," May said. She knelt and put a hand on Sophie's shoulder like a blessing. "You know where your mom is?" Sophie nodded. Her eyes were the color they'd always been. "She's going to be mad," she said, and smiled like a person who is loved when they deserve a scolding. She left with the same kind of grace Etta had, but pointed the other direction, toward upstairs apartments and people who check your homework while stirring soup. We watched her go, and didn't breathe until the bell made the ugliest sound it has ever made, like a crow had learned to be a wind chime. Wick tucked the receipt into an inside pocket that didn't exist until he needed it. He looked at me. "You will not remember being safe," he said. "You will remember doing a job well." "That's not the same thing," I said. "It will be," he said. "That's what market math does. It makes equivalencies you can live with until you can't." He left before I could decide whether to throw a can of beans at his back. The dock door shut the way water shuts. The freezer settled. Aiko put her head on the counter and laughed like a person who is crying and refuses to have been crying. Eli put the crowbar away and pretended he'd known the plan all along. May hugged me. I am not a hugger. This felt like the right time to be one. She held me like she did when she put her hand over my signature. "You can borrow mine," she said softly, like she was telling a child a secret. "Anytime you need it." "Your what?" I asked, but I knew. "My safe," she said. "I've got extra. We grow it here. That's the real job." It's been months since that night. The town keeps being itself. The lantern keeps sweeping. The carts stay lined up better when the corral faces east. The receipt printer still gets poetic when it drizzles. The freezer and I have decided to be civil. Etta sends pies sometimes. Sometimes we get a whole pie. Sometimes it's a slice wrapped in wax paper with our names on it in looping script. Sophie comes in for lime soda and does her homework at the coffee counter and rolls her eyes at Eli in a way that makes me want to hand her the keys to the town. Do I miss the memory? This is where a writer would get fancy with metaphors. I don't have that. I have a gap where something used to be. The good news is, humans are resourceful. We pack straw in the hole and pour water and hope it makes a pot. Aiko reminds me to eat when I look like I've gotten pale in that way that happens at the register sometimes. May tells me stories about her first job at a corner shop that still smelled like the butcher it used to be, and how the owner used to fall asleep with his forehead on the adding machine, and how the numbers kept going. Eli brings me videos of cats doing clown math to get treats. People who love you are receipts too. Proof of purchase. Little slips of paper that say this happened and continues to happen, and is not a dream no matter what the carts think. This is a long story. I told you I wasn't going to give you bullet points. There's no hack. No, if you hear singing, count to 30. There's just a town where the second store comes in through the loading dock, and a night crew that knows how to keep the coffee hot and the floor clean, and the kids pointed toward upstairs. That's horror, I guess, if you want it to be. It's also a kind of love. The bouquet man still comes. He switched to sunflowers. Do I hate him? Less. He looks sadder now. He pays with dry coins. The mirror by aisle 4 still shows me new. I think it will for a long time. That's not a curse. That's a gift. Because new means I haven't hardened into the shape the town wanted when it chose me. New means I can keep being the kind of clerk who says no when the ledger thinks it's the only mouth that gets to eat. If you're ever driving and you miss your exit because the fog has opinions and your gas light flicks on, and you see a cracked neon fish blink and hear a bell without a door moving, stop in. I'll probably be there. I'll ask if you found everything okay. I'll show you where we keep the good tape. I'll give you a cup of coffee that has been sitting just long enough to taste like a bad choice and a good idea. If the receipt says please, don't be scared. It's just the store asking to keep being a store. If a woman in a yellow slicker tells you to turn something east, try it. If a guy named Wick smiles like he lost a bet a long time ago and is still paying it off, ignore him. If the freezer makes a sound like it wants you specifically, it doesn't. It wants everyone. That's how it works. You are not special to the horror. You are not special to the love. You have to choose to be here. You have to choose to hand someone a bag and take their cash and say, "Have a good night," in a way that means I see you. It's small. It's also gigantic. I still live above the barber. The chairs face the window. Some mornings I see them move. I wave. The lighthouse shines at nothing and everything. The lanterns by the old road blink in my peripheral vision when I walk home. The receipts in the cardboard box under the counter crinkle like the sound chapter books make when you read them under the covers with a flashlight. I don't read them so much as I stack them and think of them as a roof. A roof is just a promise that rain will pass you by. A store is a promise that you can buy what you need, or at least something that will stand in for what you needed until your heart catches up. A night shift is a promise that someone is awake while you sleep, even if that someone has traded away knowing how safe they are. That's a bargain I made. I'm not warning you not to make it. I'm just saying it's one you should make with your eyes open. If you come in and I look a little tired, it's not because I'm haunted. It's because the tape gun bit me, and we had a case of peaches in the wrong syrup, and Eli hid a realistic rubber spider behind the register, and I forgot what tannins are again. It's because Wick made a joke so good I wanted to be mad about it and couldn't. It's because the town is a big customer, and it tips in birthdays and fog, and the way two strangers in line end up telling each other about their houses like they're swapping maps. We'll be there, under the cracked neon fish. We'll be ridiculous and stubborn and soft. We'll be open until 11 unless the roof comes off. We'll ring you up. We'll bag your flowers. We'll keep the road turned east. We'll make sure the receipts say what they need to say. And if you need us to tell the ledger no while you walk out with what matters most, we'll try. That's the job. That's the story. No rules, just work. And a market that knows your name even if you never told it. And a lighthouse that points at what left and somehow still helps you find your way home.